Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Leprechauned by Jolie Sue Burkhart. Narrated by Meghan Kelly. Chapter 1. Life with the 4 Irish treasures wasn't going to be all rainbows, pots of gold, and lucky charms. Barely a week ago, I'd woken up in bed with a stone gargoyle statue, and my life had not been the same. Now I sat in a leprechaun's bar with 5 gorgeous men at my beck and call. Great, right? What more could a girl want? For one thing, a bed. For sleep. I'd been painting for days, trying to find clues to Doran's whereabouts so we could break the curse. I hadn't slept much at all. I'd almost died in Lake Taneycomo. We'd freed Doran, and the 4 treasures had brought me back to Shamrock for some incredibly hot sex on top of the bar. I wasn't complaining, far from it. Though after what seemed like hours later, they were still drinking, still laughing and catching up on all the battles the other 3 men had been in while Doran laid trapped. And I was falling asleep slumped against the bar. I could go home, except my current home was only a room at my best friend's house. Viviana had taken me in when I'd left my ex-husband. I didn't have my own place, and I sure couldn't bring 4 or 5 men home to her guest room. Bleary-eyed, I propped my chin up and turned to Warwick behind the bar. "Do you have a place where I can sleep?" A gentle chime rang through the bar, cutting through the laughter immediately. Doran, Aidan, Ivar, and Keen immediately set their drinks down on the bar and gave Warwick their full attention. "Last call, gentlemen." He tipped his head my way. "Most Dor needs her beauty sleep." I almost cracked my jaw yawning so hard. Sorry to end the party. "It's sorry we are that we lost ourselves in tales rather than seeing to you." Doran came closer, pulling me gently into his arms. He was still gigantic even in his human form. His massive hand cupped my entire head, and his body was just as hard as the stone statue. "Let's be off to bed, lads." Ivar gave a sheepish glance in Aidan and Keen's direction. "She won't be wanting any part of our loft." "Fuck." Aidan grimaced, the formidable crack he always had between his eyes deepening into a Grand Canyon crevice. "No way can we take her there." I yawned again, snuggling up against Doran's mighty chest. "Where do you live? It can't be that bad." "Above the tattoo parlor." Keen tugged on his gloves, preparing to step back out into the real world. No one ever went away from him unsatisfied, which meant his touch was orgasmic. Every muscle in my body shivered with the delightful memory of his touch and kiss. But yeah, I was too tired to even think about round 2 now. "It's a place where a bunch of men sleep in between battles," Aidan added. "Not just us, but the rest of the Demon Hunter's men who don't have a place of their own. It's a motherfucking dumpster heap." "The warehouse?" Warwick offered. "It's mostly empty, plenty of space, and there's a bed she can use to rest." Doran's chest rumbled beneath my ear like distant thunder. "Rhea needs to rest in comfort and safety, not in a war camp or an empty cold warehouse, for fuck's sake. What have you bleeding idiots been doing with yourselves all these centuries? Have you no gold or property accumulated to accommodate most stir for even one night?" "We invested everything in weapons," Aidan retorted. "You were gone. The treasurekeeper, dead or lost. Cycle after cycle after cycle. We focused on killing as many of the fucking demons as we could and called that good enough until we were slaughtered to start anew." I was so tired their words started to blur, and I could barely mumble myself. "I'll just sleep here, even though you're as hard as a rock." Doran shifted me in his arms, cradling me like a baby. Have you no mortal bed here, Greenshanks? Only the bar, sorry to say. I blinked fiercely, trying to pry my eyeballs open. How about the summer isle? No one said anything. For a moment, I thought I really had gone to sleep. But no, they were staring at me. Very be a dangerous place, Mostar, Warwick said. I frowned. You said you'd love to show it to me someday. Why not now? Damn me traitorous tongue. He smiled apologetically at the other men as he wiped the bar and removed their drinks. Sorry, lads. I didn't mean to put that bee in her bonnet. At least being confused helped me wake up a little more. Not to mention, hurt. Maybe he'd just thrown out that offer earlier, not ever intending to take me to his home. A polite lie thrown out casually in a conversation. He hadn't meant. Never, he whispered in my head. I meant every word. Then why? I whispered, blinking back tears. My eyes were gritty. I wanted a bath. I wanted to sleep for a week. Most mortals never set foot into fairy at all, Doran said. This here bar be fairly safe. I sat on the shelf watching Warwick's trade for centuries, and only a handful of humans ever found their way inside. They all went home after a pleasant pint. But this place is on the fringe of fairy, 1 foot on either side of the veil, so to speak. It's understood to be neutral. Aye, so it is, Warwick replied. I've served fae both dark and light, though mark my words, if ever I asked for a pint, I'd throw him out, his terrible eye be damned. There be rules, Aidan said with a grim slant to his lips. Fae be fucking dangerous at any time, but in their own land, it's naught but trickery and illusion. It took a few minutes for my exhausted brain to finally read between the lines. They don't trust the leprechaun, even though we just fucked on top of his bar. Warwick had helped us free Doran, and in the beginning, he'd been the only one willing to help me. I'd had to fucking steal Aidan's motorcycle to get his attention. All I'd had to do was walk into Shamrock accidentally, and Warwick had been on my side, eager to help. Too eager? Why didn't they trust him enough to allow me to go to his home? I lifted my head, forcing my bleary eyes to focus on Warwick. The sexy bartender who'd been my first introduction to fairy. The leprechaun who'd started growing his hair down to his waist and swore it'd be to the floor if I wanted it, simply to please me. Why don't they trust you? It's complicated. Let's just say my reputation precedes me. Doran looked down at me, his eyes narrowed. What is it, Mostor? And it dawned on me. They don't know that you can talk in my head. No, Warwick answered. They cannot hear our conversation despite their own spokes in your mind. Why? I asked again. How is that possible? You're Mostor. Remember that, no matter what happens. You be treasure for me too, Rian Newkirk. Which wasn't an answer at all. Chapter 2. I really had to sell a painting soon, because I was going to owe Viviana a fortune after all this was said and done. I had to use the credit card she'd given me to rent a hotel room for a few nights. I knew she wouldn't mind in the slightest. I did text her first, though I wasn't surprised when she didn't answer right away. After we'd freed Doran, she'd ridden off into the sunset on the back of Hammer's motorcycle, her glorious red hair blazing like a banner. She probably would have told me just to take everyone to her house, but that would have been awkward as hell once she came home. She hadn't said how long she'd be gone, but I imagined at least the weekend. She made a fantastic salary and had always been frugal with her money, though she did have a weakness for designer clothes. I knew she could afford it, but I still felt like shit for using her card again. Growing up poor had affected both of us, though in different ways. I still wondered if part of why I'd fallen into marriage so quickly had been a desire for financial stability. I'd even given up my painting to work a job that I hated because it was the sensible and financially smart thing to do. Vivi had made it her life's goal to become indispensable wherever she worked. She was certainly indispensable to me, my only friend, my rock that had gotten me through the horrible divorce. A place to live while Jonathan dragged me through court over and over and over. Money for an attorney I couldn't afford, even at a fraction of the price I'm sure she would have made on anyone else, likely as a favor to Vivi or her boss. She loved the challenges that came with working for the best defense attorney in Kansas City. Perhaps even the state. I'd certainly hire him if I ever got into legal trouble, though I didn't currently have 2 pennies to rub together. I was running on fumes by the time we got checked into the local Comfort Inn. At least we'd have free breakfast in the morning. I couldn't even muster amusement at watching Doran react to modern technology. Sitting on a shelf in a leprechaun's bar, the gargoyle hadn't seen many motorcycles, elevators, or cell phones. I'd managed to get a suite, so we had 2 queen beds and the couch pulled out into a full-size bed. Hopefully, that would be enough surface space for anyone who didn't want to share a bed. I zombie-walked my ass into the bathroom to take a shower, while Aiden, Keen, and Ivar played rock, paper, scissors to decide who got to sleep with me, and Doran, because evidently they thought there'd be enough room for another unreasonably large man's body in addition to the massive gargoyle. A queen-size bed had never seemed so small. Standing under steaming hot water, I tried to wrap my brain around everything that had happened. In a matter of days, I'd begun painting again like a mad person, driven mercilessly by Doran to find him and break the curse trapping him as the gargoyle. Before that, I'd been pretty alone in the world, other than my best friend since childhood. My ex-Jonathan certainly didn't count. I didn't have much family, at least not that I remembered. Most of my childhood was hazy, as if I'd blocked it out for a reason. I'd never felt like I fit anywhere. Vivi was my only family. Now I'd suddenly gained 5 lovers. Who was this person? Not boring, geeky Rianne, that was for sure. I'd rarely ever had boyfriends growing up. At least, I didn't remember any before my ex-husband. I suppressed a shudder as I turned off the water and toweled dry. I was free of him, and my new men were nothing like him. But are you sure? A tiny part of my mind whispered. What did I really know about them? I'd only met Doran in person a few hours ago, though he'd been haunting my dreams. I couldn't deny the intense pull I'd felt for all 4 of the treasures from the very beginning. Going so far as to grab Aiden's junk the first time I met him, simply because he was being an arrogant ass. So unlike me. It was unlike me to do any of this. Paint like a maniac again, go off on adventures, fuck some men I'd just met on top of a bar. My cheeks blazed as I looked at myself in the steamy mirror. I'd asked them to come on me while Doran fucked me. Even the leprechaun. I'd enjoyed being ravished on top of that bar, of having come from 5 men on my skin. Me, the plump, short, mousy, unemployed, broke painter. Now they waited for me outside the flimsy bathroom door. I didn't have a change of clothes, no money, no job, no place to live. Plus, there were undercurrents between the 4 men and Warwick that I didn't understand. It made me feel uneasy, as if something important was unsaid between the 5 of them, and I didn't have a clue what it was. Other than Vivi, Warwick had been the only one to help me. If they decided they needed to try and force me to choose them over the leprechaun? No, Doran had welcomed him into the fold, so to speak. I wasn't going to doubt their dedication to me the very first night we were all together. But we aren't all together. I couldn't help but think as I stepped back out into the room clad only in the basic hotel terry cloth robe. Warwick wasn't here. They hadn't wanted me to go to his homeland and ferry, though surely it would have been more comfortable, certainly more spacious, not to mention free.
"It's decided,"
Doran said as I paused at the foot of the bed.
"We have a plan."
Ivar lay beside him on the bed, bare-chested, but still in dark boxers. Evidently, he'd won the right to join us. Good. I hadn't had a lot of interaction with him yet. Of the 4 treasures, I knew the least about him. His black skin contrasted with beautiful amber eyes that glowed with his brilliant light when he smiled. Taller than the other 3 men with a lanky, lean frame, Ivar was the sword of light, from which no one could escape. When he'd helped Aiden with the giant kelpie in the lake, a golden beam had shot out of his chest. He'd flown toward the battle on nothing but light. Beside him, Doran seemed to take up 2/3 of the bed. A big man, both wide and tall and thick. Giant platter-sized hands and feet. Crooked hooked nose, hulking shoulders. Very much the gargoyle from my dreams, even in human form. I glanced over at the other bed, and Keen sent a smoldering look at me. He had the sheet pulled up over his lap, so I guessed he didn't have a stitch of clothing on. Also, no gloves. Gulp. Though I couldn't blame him in the slightest for not wanting to sleep with tight leather on his hands. That put the grumpiest man of the lot on the couch. Despite the comfortable temperature in the room, Aiden had retrieved his leather jacket that I'd borrowed. Rather than pull the bed out and take up all the space in the room, he'd chosen to simply kick back on the couch with his head on the armrest and his still-booted feet propped up on the opposite end. His eyes were closed, his face shadowed by one arm over his forehead, but I didn't buy that he was asleep.
"After a few hours' rest,"
Doran continued in his deep floor-rattling rumble,
"we'll sort out our resources so we may secure permanent living quarters that are both safe and comfortable."
Sort out resources? I couldn't help but frown. Does that mean you all have to sell some of your weapons and stuff?
"Aye,"
Aiden replied in a flat, bored tone. I really didn't know any of them too well yet, but Aiden was never bored. Never not sarcastic with a bite to his voice. It sounded to me like Doran was making him sell off some of his equipment to fund a place to live for me. I'm sorry. Vivi was helping me list some of my paintings to sell too. One icy baby blue eye cracked open in the shadowed recesses beneath his arm.
"Why the fuck would you be sorry? I don't give a rat's ass about mortal weaponry. We have a conduit now. We shouldn't need an extensive human arsenal to push out the demon horde."
Oh, you sounded not mad. I took that to mean you're upset. He huffed out a laugh and slammed his eye back shut.
"Only that I am denied the pleasure of tucking that glorious ass back against my dick while you sleep."
Now it was my turn to let out a laugh, though it came out more like a strangled groan.
"That's my pleasure tonight,"
Ivar drawled, sitting up to offer me his hand. It was both an "oh shit" and "fuck yeah" moment. Did I take the robe off or keep it on? We'd already fucked. Well, Doran had been inside me after treasuring me on the bar, which meant he'd driven me insane with his tongue. All of us had climaxed thanks to Keen's wicked talent. But it was one thing to have sex and another to actually sleep in their arms, like looking into their eyes, breathing the same air, relaxing enough to sleep, safe and secure. I did trust them, obviously, or I wouldn't be here. I'd almost died to free Doran. I had no doubts whatsoever that they'd always take care of me, if for no other reason than to keep their magic intact. I was their conduit. I was the hub at the center of the wheel, 4 spokes spinning around me, casting out powerful magic to drive back the forces of darkness. They wouldn't risk that, especially after losing the treasurekeeper before, when Doran was cursed. Deciding to keep the robe on just for my own peace of mind, I took Ivar's hand and let him help me crawl up into the middle of the bed. Both he and Doran turned on their sides, giving me a little more room, but it was still wall-to-wall muscle. Heat, rock-hard temptation all around me. I ended up facing Ivar, so it was Doran against my back, his gigantic hand splayed across my abdomen, snuggling me back against his heat. With his arm around me, I was almost completely encased in muscle. He was just that big. It made me feel like a baby bird tucked under her mother's wing. No safer place in the world than under Doran Stoneheart's mighty arm. Curling our clasped hands against his chest, Ivar just looked at me with those beautiful golden eyes.
Such a treasure. We are truly blessed, Doran. Aye.
That single word rumbled through me, vibrating me from head to toe. How could he say that when he'd been trapped for hundreds of years, a giant gargoyle statue forgotten in a root cellar near a church? He rubbed his mouth against my ear.
I'd suffer the curse another 1,000 years just to hold you again, Moster.
Blinking back tears, I curled my other hand around his wrist, holding them both. No more curses, please.
What was your life like before you heard Doran's call?
Ivar asked.
If you're not too tired.
I was feeling less like a zombie after the shower, though I didn't think the alert brain would last long after the week I'd had. I lived with Vivi. She took me in after I filed for divorce. His eyes flared, and he glanced up at Doran.
You were wed before?
Shame tightened my throat. Yeah, for 5 years.
Did you love him?
His question shouldn't have startled me. People got married because they fell in love, right? But I honestly couldn't remember being happy with Jonathan. I must have been once. Before he hit on Vivi, before he made me feel so small. I guess so? At least in the beginning. Doran lifted his hand to my chin and turned my face toward him, leaning back to make room for me to turn enough so my neck wasn't strained.
I detect unpleasantness in your voice, and your mind is nothing but thick tar when you think of him. Does this man yet live? I will be only too happy to pay him a visit.
Aiden growled.
Let's each collect a body part from this wanker.
No, I said hurriedly. I don't want anything to do with him ever again. The divorce was bad enough. Doran's eyes glittered with malice.
Tell us, Moster. I want to know this story.
My stomach churned, my eyes burning with tears. I don't like to talk about it. His stony face softened, and he brushed his lips against each of my eyelids.
Very well, Moster. We will talk of it another day, but talk we must. If this man broke your heart, we must take care to heal it and not injure you further.
Relieved, I turned toward him and buried my face against his chest. His big fingers stroked my hair, trying to take away some of the hurt. But he couldn't soothe that pain away. I was scared, terrified actually. Once they heard my story, they'd think less of me. I certainly did. Why had I married such a jerk? Deliberately? Especially when I couldn't remember a single good time? When I couldn't remember if I'd ever even loved him? Chapter 3. I slept so hard and long that I woke feeling a bit like Rip Van Winkle. Sunlight streamed in through the windows, but I couldn't tell if it was morning or afternoon. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then I turned my head and found gleaming golden eyes shining back at me.
"Good afternoon, sleepyhead,"
Ivar said.
"Feel better?"
I stretched, groaning as blood started flowing through my lethargic muscles. Ouch! I'm actually pretty sore. I feel like a herd of horses trampled me while I slept. His lips quirked, a dimple popping up in his cheek.
Doran does tend to have that effect.
Heat flooded me. Embarrassment, yeah, a little, but also desire. The memory of him thrusting deep inside me made my breath catch on a soft, ragged sigh. I couldn't recall feeling such overwhelming pleasure before. A twinge of unease nagged me. Not that I wanted to dwell on my ex-husband's skills, or lack thereof, in the bedroom, but when I tried to remember—
"What has put that look on your face, Moster?"
Ivar asked. "Nothing," I said brightly, sitting up enough to fluff the pillows up beneath me so I could see the entire room. "Where is everyone?"
"They went to give Doran a tour of their weapons cache to decide what to keep and what to sell. They've been gone a few hours."
I was vaguely surprised to find myself still wrapped up in the hotel robe, though it was gaping open a bit after sleeping. I didn't really care to put the corset top back on, but the rest of my clothes were at Vivi's. While I'd certainly felt sexy in the green velvet that hugged my curves and made the girls look fantastic, it was an outfit to wear to a club, not something you wore during the broad daylight at a cheap hotel without feeling like you were taking the walk of shame home for some new clothes. Though that did make my lips quirk. Me, Brienne, the geeky painter, taking one hell of a walk of shame back to get some clothes. Oh yeah.
"Aiden grabbed some things for you from your friend's house,"
Ivar added. Eyebrow arched, I watched him get up and fetch a bag to lay on the foot of the bed. How did he even know where she lives? I never took him there. Ivar snorted.
"Aiden is part bloodhound. He could track you to the coast and back now that he knows your scent."
Maybe. Though he could have asked Warwick where Vivi lived. Would he have stooped so low as to ask the leprechaun? Warwick had whisked me home that first night, and then I'd called him for help to secure the warehouse and move all my painting supplies so I could work on finding Doran's location. Either way, it was a very considerate thing for Aiden to do. Even more so because he generally wasn't the warm and fuzzy kind of guy.
"I can nip downstairs for some coffee if you'd like,"
Ivar offered.
"It's not as good as what your friend made, but it's better than nothing."
That'd be great. Thank you. He leaned down, bracing his forearm on the headboard.
"My pleasure, Moster."
His eyes gleamed with soft golden light that seemed to flow into me, filling me with sunshine and warmth. It felt incredible, like an internal hug and 1,000 compliments all wrapped up into an exquisite chocolate candy that dissolved on my tongue and sweetened my entire body. I cupped his cheek, tracing my thumb along his jawline, enjoying the roughness from his stubble. "You really are incredible." He closed his hand over mine, moving my fingers so he could kiss each fingertip.
"Nothing compared to the treasure of your heart."
I tipped my head back, offering my mouth silently if he wanted a kiss. He did indeed. His soft lips nibbled against mine, and the sense of glow intensified, as if I was swallowing a warm, thick glob of honeyed sunlight. So good. I could feel that heat spreading through me as if I'd thrown back a shot or two of fine Irish whiskey. He lifted his head, his eyes sparkling with faceted rays of sunlight. "Wow," I breathed out. Too bad I hadn't brushed my teeth yet. I would have gladly opened up for a deeper kiss.
"You give me that power, Moster. My light had all but died out before we found you. I'll be right back."
Warm sparks danced through my blood as I watched him leave. Double wow. His ass filled out his jeans just as spectacularly as his kiss had lit me up. Shaking myself out of a dazed stupor, I got up and dragged the bag into the bathroom. Aiden had even thought to grab my toothbrush. Bless his
Sample complete. Ready to continue?